Hi, I'm Justice Obaya.
And I'm Raven White, and we're from ASIFA-South.
And we are going to be your co-hosts for our ASIFA-South monthly podcast. So I'm sure a couple of you are out there scratching your heads wondering, what is ASIFA-South? Well, I'm here to tell you, we are a nonprofit chapter of the International Animated Film Association. ASIFA was started back in 1960 in France and has over 30 chapters globally. We started out back in 1995 as ASIFA Atlanta, and we are the only chapter in the entire Southeast. With that being said, we had an obligation to the rest of the region, and we expanded our reach to cover as far north as Maryland and as far west as Texas.
So in other words, we're a big deal.
Yeah, we're everywhere in the Southeast, at least.
Yep. Disclaimer, this is a podcast, and language may be unprofessional, but...
What the hell you talk about?
But, you know, it's okay, because we're in the entertainment industry, and... we're pretty casual over here. So we're going to talk about, for January, our first ever, new things. This is a new thing
year?
that we're,
New year, new resolutions?
Yeah, we're ASIFA-South is like the first one to do the podcast. So this is new for us as well. So to keep on theme, it's going to be about new ventures in the new year. We have a special guest with us today, animator, recruiter, and consultant, Allyssa A. Lewis, most noted for her animation on over 75 episodes and promos of FX's Emmy-winning series Archer, has also produced content for NBC's 30 Rock, I Am Other, Animation Domination, Apple, Comic-Con, San Diego, and Captain Planet's Planeteer Movement. As the founder and executive director of Georgia's first animation resource and staffing agency, My Animation Life, MAL, she primarily focuses on connecting artists in the animation pipeline with clients. Creating Georgia's most inclusive animation map, calendar, and classified listing are just a few of the popular assets MAL provides to strengthen Georgia's animation industry. Lewis is the animation director of Reimagine, ATL, where she works to connect youth with resources and mentorships to amplify their voices through media. She sits on the board of directors for ASIFA-South, so one of the largest international animation societies in the southeastern United States. We already did our little talk, and is a judge for the Emmy Awards. So give it up.
Well, first, may I start by saying you are a busy woman.
Yes,
a very busy woman.
Right, like she sent this to us, and I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. So real quick, I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about this, but also give us some tips on how to do such a great bio.
Yeah,
later on.
Tell us about your company. Tell us about
it's
MAL.
called fiction writing. So.
So just tell us a little bit about you and My Animation Life a little bit further than what I probably have briefly.
So as you stated, I'm an animator, recruiter, and consultant. My job really consists of connecting people. I find artists through means of going to conventions, scouring the internet, meeting people face-to-face, getting applications. And then I'd like to say I find the clients, but really they come to me and they say I have an animated project that I need to complete and I need artists for it. Sometimes they need one artist, sometimes they need an entire pipeline. So we staff the entire pipeline for instances when everyone needs to put their hands on deck.
So I want to touch on something. So this is a new year. These are new resolutions and, again, new ventures. So there are people out there who they're in college. They're studying animation or a closely related field like VisFX, game design. They're probably preparing to graduate, or they've already graduated. They're like, okay, it's ready. It's time for me to get a job. Or, worst case scenario, somebody's been out of the loop, been out of the working world. They may have had a job, but not what they went to school for the last decade, and they're like, okay, I want to go ahead as this year is the year. I'm going to make a new resolution, get in there. I'd first like to ask, tell us about your history. How did you get on your path? Tell us, what are the numbers out there? How likely is it for somebody to get into that field after spending 4 years in school over it? Tell us a little bit about your journey and how it correlates to somebody else who's also wants to follow that path.
So my journey has been filled with a lot of twists and turns. I have been focused on getting into the animation industry, specifically to be an animator for television. But how I got there, it's kind of, it's not the clear-cut story that you hear of I went to art classes in school, and they taught me this and that. And then I went to college. I got an internship, and then I applied, and I got the job. I actually have wanted to be an animator since I was 2 years old. I watched Bugs Bunny being drawn to life, and I thought, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I told my mother, and she was very supportive. My father, not so much. He definitely wanted me to be an athlete.
Well, you at least got one of the parents.
I got one of the parents.
half is half successful.
So that meant not being able to take art classes when I was getting ready to train for college. I didn't leave high school with this beautiful portfolio to show my work. I did have accolades on my resume from things that I had done around the school, things that could be done during school hours and not after school, because that was for my athletics. Mm-hmm. When I left for college, it was a little, I guess, a little disappointing as to the education I received in the beginning, because I didn't do a lot of research into what schools were out there. I'm a first-generation American. My parents are both from Guyana. I had not done the applications for art universities, as many parents do when they're going to just universities in general. So a lot of things that we needed to have, we just didn't know about. And I certainly didn't know how to sell myself or my skills to a university to get all of the benefits that you can get packaged before you enter. When I got to my first university, which was Wesleyan, and I will say a good note on Wesleyan is that they are fantastic when it comes to craftsmanship. So I learned a lot about patience and how to really fine-tune your craft before moving on to the next step. But when I got there was an art competition that was university-wide, and all the students that were in art were able to participate. That's first year, second, third, fourth year, and I won my first semester.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, I got to get out of here. I have to go to another university where I can be challenged. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know about other universities. I started calling up schools and saying, do you teach animation? Can I learn to be an animator here? And all the schools are like, yes, of course you can. But that's not always true, or at least it's not as accurate as it's depicted. So I was in this bind, and I have to thank my cousin, Ashley. Ashley, if you're out there listening to this interview, thank you for recommending that I go to.
Thank you, Ashley.
Shout College of Art and Design. I went to SCAD, and I learned a lot about the animation industry, but it was very overwhelming. When I was growing up, my last, say, 10 or 12 years were spent in a very small town, and we didn't have Photoshop. We didn't take classes on how to use the internet properly. Mm-hmm. I could barely send an email. I was using MS Paint to do a lot of my artwork.
Oh, wow. There was a big learning curve for you.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I remember crying when I first saw Photoshop being used in class, just being demoed, because I thought, this witchcraft, I didn't know it existed out here.
This is witchcraft, sorcery.
It was a small, very conservative town, so it was just like, everything is magic to me. But the other students were grasping it really fast, and it made me feel like I was in the wrong place. I would have to work very hard to get where I wanted to go. But then I kept thinking of the story of Walt Disney and how far he came to get into animation. And that really motivated me to say, it doesn't matter if you have humble beginnings. Right. You can still keep going. Unfortunately, I did not do stellar in school. I made good grades, yes. I got my my good GPA. That doesn't really do much for your career.
I think that's really a good point to put out there, is that you don't have to be the star student in class to make sure that that you're going to get into the industry. Not everyone's path is the same path. So, yeah, I think that's fantastic that you pointed that out, because even though you humbly admitted that I wasn't the best, you still made it into the industry. Mm-hmm. You're still in the industry. You are in the industry. So.
Yeah, and as somebody who is still sliding by, no shame in it, but keep going.
Yeah, so my grades were good. That's great, but it doesn't really do anything for you, because most people who are looking to hire you are not going to look at your grades. So I could do the exercises, but then I could see how my peers were doing, and university is a great opportunity for you to get a snapshot of the world. You have people who are from small towns who don't know how to send an email properly, to people who are in the industry doing stellar work and just need a certificate so that they can become a director somewhere else. And I felt like I was falling somewhere in the middle. I wasn't at the top where I was going to be, for sure we'll hire you the second we see your portfolio. But I wasn't at the bottom where we'd have to question whether I had enough discipline.
Did you even go to college?
Yeah. What I did was assess myself constantly. When I first started the university, I saw where the other students were. I saw where I was, and I thought, how am I going to compensate so that I can give myself a better opportunity to be employed or reach my goal in any other fashion? So I wrote lists of ways that I could also be successful. I listened to other people who were successful by alternative means. I'm a big listener of motivational speakers. I have to thank my mother for that. She's always taking me to seminars, and they talk about the roundabout way that you can become successful in any industry.
Okay, so roundabout way. Now you have me intrigued. A roundabout way. So what do you mean by that? Like what?
You have this straightforward path, which is you go to art class in high school. You put your application in for college. They give you a certain amount of scholarship money. Your parents give you a certain amount of scholarship money.
If you're lucky enough for your parents to put that money in.
And you're in school. You may do a work study, but you're not working a full-time job. And you do your coursework. Everyone loves your work. The teacher loves you. And you make a beautiful portfolio. You research where the studio is that you want to apply to. You become buddies with the hiring manager. And then they hire you and you start working there. And you work your whole life there. You make TV shows and you make a movie or two. You get a huge IMDb listing, and that's your life.
And you retire. So the traditional path.
That's
ideal.
I wouldn't even, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. So you were in that small class of people who went to school for this degree and got, especially not having that knowledge of Photoshop or like even
or
sending
anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So what did you do? Like here you are at your graduation at SCAD, and you're like, you said I wasn't top of the class, but I wasn't at the bottom. So what did you do?
Before then, I think a lot of it starts before you graduate. So every year, and it's not even every year, it's like every few months, I'm doing these assessments of myself, where I am versus where the students are versus where I need to be to get where I want to go. And I started making lists of things I could do. And I thought, okay, well, I'll add my value by saying that I also do this, I also do that. I started the United Student Forum at SCAD.
Oh, wow.
SCAD. I was with a group that started SCAD Radio, SCAD Newspaper, SCAD Magazine. And we worked really hard to get these organizations up and running so that we would have stronger resumes and more opportunities later on. That got me into journalism when I was doing the newspaper and the magazine. And what I learned was the production process, how stiff deadlines can be and how important it is to get things done in advance. And it also gave me an opportunity to do what you two are doing now, which is interview people who are in places that I wanted to go. So I would go to different studios and ask them if I could do an interview. And when I was with the SCAD Atlanta Animation Society, which is an animation group at SCAD, I would bring people in from studios to speak to the students. That would give me an opportunity to listen to what they had to say, but it also gave them the value of being able to talk to the students. So I kept strategizing ways like that. How can I get the information I need? How can I get the networks that I need? Just me being my small self with a so-so portfolio, so-so education, and so-so social skills. And it was this exchange of value. I would encourage any student in that situation to think of what they can bring to someone else so that they can bring those opportunities. A lot of times opportunities go to the best. And so if you're not the best, you have to strategize.
What would you tell your younger self about the industry?
About the animation industry?
I don't know how to get in and break in. And
Okay.
what have you.
I want to say if I knew the stats about the success rates of the animation industry when I was younger that I do today, I would not be in the industry. So I would continue to shield myself from that information. There are a lot of things that have come to light that I find alarming now, but I'm really glad I didn't know it when I was setting out, because I kept this kind of youthful ideal of everything's going to work out. It's going to be great.
And just to clarify, would you like to repeat those percentages just in case anyone missed it?
So
now that you know those statistics, would you, and to those that are listening in on it now know these statistics, what would you advise them to do afterwards?
I would say focus on the positive side of it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's already difficult enough to get into the industry that if you focus on the negative, then you're probably not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So focus on the fact that there is a 10%, and that if you are fortunate enough to live in Georgia, we are top 5 in the nation for animation and multimedia artists. Like top for the population, top 5 for education. And if you choose wisely with what university you want to go to, or whether you want to go at all, then you can really increase your success rate. With the plethora of art schools there are out there, and the success rates that vary dramatically, if you just choose one school over another, you've already dramatically increased your chances of being within that 10%.
And going back to, people, when you're talking about the 10% and everything and the statistics, let's talk about how you took charge. You did all these different programs while you were back in school. You started these different organizations and you carried it on. You found other skill sets that maybe people didn't have, like the journalism. How did you translate some of this stuff into opportunities when you got out of school? Because, you have a pretty big resume. You've done stuff for Floyd, for Archer. You've done stuff for Captain Plan. How did you get that stuff?
All of those are being bold and not being afraid to fail on your face. You can fail hard.
Yeah.
And I always feel like if you're going to fail, do it with your best effort. I go back to athletics. So there is a reason why you should do team sports or any kind of sport at all. As I learned that you should go powerhouse through it. I did a lot of track and field. Sometimes I do hurdles. Right. And if you hesitate before a hurdle, you're way more likely to hurt yourself and even the people around you. And you have to do that with your career as well. You have to powerhouse through it. And if you fall, but you get back up, you're way more likely to win that race if you're powerhousing it than you are. And you're even more likely to get through all the hurdles if you look forward and are bold than you are to get through those hurdles if you're timid. Right. So with doing the organizations, I thought, you know what, we'll try, we'll go ahead and do it. And even with the organizations I joined, joining ASIFA, I was still in school when I joined ASIFA, and I became the president of Scout Atlanta Animation Society. It only had one quarter before I joined, and I really wanted it to stay because it was a fantastic initiative. And I was reached by Brett Thompson, who was the standing president, and he asked me about replacing him, and I was like, no. It costs money to be presidents of organizations. Some people forget that it is expensive to run these groups.
I haven't forgotten, trust me.
Yeah, you know how much money it cost, and as a student,
as much I've lost.
it wasn't feasible. So I took the position of vice president just to assist whoever was going to be there. And with joining ASIFA, that was a fantastic decision because I got to meet a lot more people. I got to host events. It got me in front of more faces, which helped with my personality and learning how to interact with others. And ultimately, deciding to branch off and make my own company and step down from vice president, I have to attribute a lot of my social skills and business savvy from being in these organizations.
You heard her endorsement. Join ASIFA.
Yes. We are always. Back to you mentioned how we are trying to how you need to be able or willing to fail, and not be so timid. But how? There are people out there that are just timid and scared and they're afraid to fail. So how do we go do that so that we can get into those new ventures and those new
Yeah.
opportunities. For
Exactly. Like the opportunities, like again, there are people out there that have been, maybe on a bit of a hiatus is the best word to use.
Right.
Hiatus from the animation education curriculum or the industry. But you say, okay, this is a new year. This is a new me. I'm going to do this year. What would you say, not just as somebody who's worked in the industry for a studio, but somebody who now helps people with your company, get coupled up or married with other organizations like for that need those production people and those animators? What would you say to them about opportunities out there?
So there's a few things going on with that question. We have what to do when you're shy, and then we have what is the advice I would give you if you were getting out there after a hiatus. And then what opportunities do people in general look at? And if you're shy, I want to repeat, you can't be afraid to fail.
Right.
I've failed a million times. I've been fortunate that you two personally have not seen me make these huge failures, but there is a laundry list of people who have. And if you're afraid to, I'll just use a personal experience. So if you go to Savannah College of Art and Design, there is a class you have to take, and it's called public speaking. Mm-hmm. I was so terrified of taking this class that in the first 10 minutes, I left and went to the bathroom and thought I was done with college. Mm-hmm. I just started crying, and I was like, no, we have to do a group project. Second she said group project, our professor, I ran out of the room. I just grabbed my stuff, and I ran out, and I went in the bathroom. And I was like, I can't do this because I didn't enjoy interacting with people. And in high school, there was a nice buffer that a lot of assignments were individual. Mm-hmm. You do your own work. You are graded on your own abilities. So working with others wasn't something I had to tackle often. But in college, it's all I had to do was tons of group projects, tons of research things. So every single day I would cry in class. And every single speech we did, I would cry at the podium. But my goal wasn't to do an amazing speech. It was just to get through the idea of being in front of other people. On my last speech in that class, I made it without crying. Yay. And everyone clapped, and then I cried.
That is important to note, is that public speaking, talking to people, interacting with people, and especially if you're trying to get into the animation industry, you are going to have to get used to the idea of working with others.
And networking. That public speaking and engagement is super important.
It's so important.
I mean, really getting your foot in the door, a lot of it has to do with who you know,
right.
Doesn't it?
You have to have your goal in front of you. With the public speaking class, I knew I needed those skills so that I could network. So there's all these steps in front of you getting the basic steps done. And if you're in a situation where you're on a hiatus, which I see a lot of people coming in for consultations because they haven't worked for 8 to 10 or 12 years, and their portfolio that they had in school, maybe that isn't reliable anymore. They can't get a job with that. And they need to learn the new skills and programs that are out there. For them, I would say your first step is go to My Animation Life and have a consultation. But it's important to assess where you are. And you can say, I don't have a job and I don't have skills, but until you write down what you do have, you don't know what you're really working with. And then second step, think about where you want to go and really define that before you start thinking about steps and what courses you're going to take and all of that, because there are a million things you can do, and often people get overwhelmed with all the things you can learn and which way to go. Decide what you enjoy doing. Do you enjoy drawing? Why do you enjoy drawing? Is it because you like seeing things on the page? You like feeling the texture? If you're animating, do you like bringing things to life? When you figure out the why of why you enjoy something, then it probes you to go down other paths. Is there another thing with a different title you could be doing? Maybe you don't want to be an animator. Maybe you really want to be a director because you only enjoy seeing it come to life. You don't enjoy the actual practice. Figuring that out is going to save you a lot of time and money and effort and hopefully heartache. Step 3 is to start thinking about paths. So you start thinking about what resources you already have available, what resources are out there, and then how you can start utilizing those resources to get you to go where you need to go. I would also include in there, talk to someone who has already been where you want to go so that you can learn more about steps or paths that you can take or resources that you don't know of.
Yep. I'm going to also ask you a little bit more. So talking about people that have come in for consultations and that have been on hiatus, I'm loving that word.
It's so polite.
Right, it's so polite. But talking about people who've been on those hiatus, what are some of you've talked about they may not have a clear goal or idea of their path, or they may not know what their strengths are or what they have a passion for. What are some of the other challenges you've had to see or help people there that are like, you need to get over this if you want to make that next step? These are challenges you're like, okay, guys, you need to get past these challenges if you want to be successful.
A common trait I find with every single person who comes in off of a hiatus is that they're stubborn. If you, like, just a personality trait, they're very stubborn and not in a way that is positive or progressive towards their goals. They say, well, there's so many software programs out there. If I learn this, then I won't have time to learn that. True. But if you learn the right thing, then you have all the time in the world. I also see that they tend to be very cliquish in their ways. In society, we like to say that, oh, the jocks and the cheerleaders, those are the groups, they're social, and they have their own, like, social clique. And then you have people who are, like, geeky or nerdy, and they have their group, but they're more open to everyone. They're loving. It's this painting of a hero. If you're in that other category. But I'd say that people who identify as geeky, nerdy, artsy people,
like me,
can be just as cliquish as the other social groups.
As someone that has gone to art school and has been around nothing but people like that, it's I think it's just human nature.
It is human nature. We get into our clusters, our groups. We're mammals. We have a pack mentality.
Right.
You can pack, but when you start excluding people, then it becomes an issue.
Right.
And I find that with the people who have a lot of struggles, and I don't mean like I didn't find a job and it's been 3 months since I graduated. I mean it's been 8 years. It's been, longer than that. Right. That their pack mentality is very, very strict. It's people who like what I like, do what I do, like, they are very strict in who they allow to be in part of their lives, and they're very strict in what they view as an opportunity. An opportunity is X, Y, or Z. But when you start opening your mind to other paths, which is why it's good to talk to other people and figure out how they got to where they are, and also look at your resources and start strategizing, what you'll see is that there are several paths, and that's just the common trait, is that they're stubborn and they're very cliquish.
And that goes back to what you were saying about the workaround path, that some people think that, okay, I go to school, in high school I learn art, I go to college for art, I get the internship in art, I get hired for art, I work there for 50 years and then I retire. People are probably saying, okay, well, how do I go and work for Turner? And it's like, well, Turner's a wonderful studio, but does everybody who apply there get in? Like, no, like, how do I go and work for Floyd or Primal Screen? Like, how do I, I'm going to apply to them and I'm going to get in, but do we actually assume that everybody that applies they're going to hire?
Right.
Or even the people who started those studios. If you look at some of the backgrounds of the people who were at the studios that people want to apply to, they didn't take the route that a lot of people are very adamant about following.
And adhering to. Absolutely.
Yep, and I'm sure you see like opportunities outside of like just the big studios like Turner that would like people are like, well, it's not working for this company or that company, so I'll turn down that offer. Is that some of the stubbornness you've noticed?
Yes, and I feel like it's a failure to understand the business aspect of the animation industry. If you have ever run your own business, one, you have a leg up on everyone else because understanding the business will give you more perspective on why you were not selected, if you'll be selected in another opportunity, or if you should just venture out somewhere else or on your own. When it comes to looking at studios and deciding like, oh, I want to work at this big studio or that big studio, I would go back to figuring out yourself, what you enjoy doing, what your passion is, what you're strong at. Unfortunately, I hate to say what you're strong at because you can always get better. But when you know that and you know the environment you want to be in, you won't just name off the top 5 largest companies. You'll start thinking, well, if I really want to work someplace where I'm going to be fulfilled as a person, then it has to have this, this, and that looks like it's this company or that company, or it looks like I'm making my own company.
Yeah, a company, you are a powerhouse. You've worked in the industry. Now you own a company. You've had to start one. And there are people out there who, I've been working for those studios and I'm like, okay, that was fun for a while it lasted. But now I'm trying to, maybe this year isn't about coming off at hiatus. Maybe it's about, I want to start my own thing. I want to start my own company. And when you're freelance, technically that's what you are. You're a business owner. You are self-employed. You are your own company. So what would you say to somebody? I mean, I'm sure you get a ton of freelancers as well coming to you. What would you say to them who have zero knowledge of the business world? Like, what are challenges they have to overcome if they want to be successful as a freelancer or business owner?
I would like to say that whether you are an independent contractor doing freelance or you are working in a studio, you're always at the core working for yourself. So I would encourage every single artist in whatever industry that you're in to learn the business side, because if it's as simple as managing your taxes or doing your own promotional marketing, this is what's going to decide whether you move forward or not. If you're in a studio, the difference between you getting a promotion or getting the access to do things you want to do at that studio could rely on what you do to improve yourself and market yourself. And that is a big part of the business. If you're going to start your own studio or start your own company like I did, you're going to have to learn a lot of the business stuff. It doesn't have to be a mountain, although I will tell you it is a mountain, but it doesn't have to be a mountain at first. You can take it little by little. There's a lot of quotes about
how do you eat an elephant?
The how do you run a marathon? Like one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. I had been doing staffing for about 8 years before I left and started my animation life. I'd done it on the side. And a lot of artists do stuff on the side. That's also a part of your business and a part of your brand. I anticipated that I would have to learn more, but how much more I didn't anticipate, because if you're really going to be sustainable, you have to understand legal, taxes, employment, contracts, negotiations, banking, all of
licenses.
You have to understand it. You don't have to understand it in its fullness. Right. You can always get help for that. But understanding the very basics will allow you to at least select a candidate that really can help you.
Yeah. So I know we are about running a little low on time. So what would be some closing statements or remarks you would give to people who either are trying to get into the industry, coming off a hiatus, or wanting to start their own business? What are some things they can do that you're just personally to kick off this year, this 2018 right? What would you tell them?
I'll say one of the things I'm most proud of doing was joining a job club when I left SCAD. So I started my first job when I was in my first quarter of SCAD. I worked at Georgia Public Broadcasting. But in 2008, when the highest wave of the economic recession hit, our entire floor got let go. And it was very difficult for me to recover from that. I got advice when I was at SCAD from a professor, Greg Azaparty. He said, don't brand yourself as whatever company you're working for. Always know that you are you, because when you're working for a large machine, it's easy to say, I'm a this worker, I'm an X machine worker. And when that falls, to not know who you are, what your value is, or if you can't do anything at all. And I felt kind of shaky when leaving Georgia Public Broadcasting, but remembering those words from Greg's really helped me push through. So I joined the job club, and they had us sit down and write a list of everything that we wanted in our job. It's like this vision board for the job that you want. And if you are just starting out, and if you're just starting your own company, wherever you are in the industry, I would say go ahead and do that. Write that list. I was very fortunate to get everything on my list when I joined Floyd County Productions. It even had the nature walk in the back and the natural water setting that I asked for. I had all that on the list. The instructor said, be as wild as possible. And I was wild, and I said, I wanted this. I want to be able to get up and eat when I want. I want to be able to touch multiple projects. And I had all of that on there, and I checked every single box when I got the job at Floyd. Now I have a new list, and you're going to keep making new lists. But having that list at least lets you know, hey, this thing someone's telling me is an opportunity. Or, hey, this great thing someone's telling me is not actually an opportunity because it takes me off the path where I'm going. Being able to make that kind of discernment, I feel can only happen when you know where you're going.
That's fantastic.
It is awesome. Now I'm like, even though I'm busy, I'm like, God, I can pick up something else now. She just gave me a charge.
Yes. So now that we're closing down, can again tell us where to follow you, your social medias, all of My Animation Life, how to get into it, all this good stuff.
So My Animation Life has a lot of opportunities. Our newest one being the Georgia Animation Guide. We have a book of opportunities. You're looking for opportunities?
Wow.
It's a book of opportunities. And if you are an opportunity for an artist or a client in the animation industry, please contact us at contact@myanimationlife.com. That's CONTACT at myanimationlife.com. You can also come to our office. We have a new one on Peachtree and 17th. You're welcome to drop in for consultations or for our artist clinic, which happens every second Friday. We'll spend 20 minutes going over quick questions. Or you can join us on a tour. February will be our first tour of the year. We had to push back the January one. It was a 1-studio tour. Now it's a 5-studio tour. It's going to be like a studio hop. So you're welcome to join us on a studio tour. And if you're looking for resources like classes, tutorials, or someone to mentor you, which is hold your hand and walk you through the process of becoming more successful, reach out to us at our email, contact@myanimationlife.com. Or go to our website, myanimationlife.com, and get our free resources like our animation map, which lists over 80 brick-and-mortar animation studios, our calendar, which will tell you where you can meet other artists in the industry, and our classified listing, which is just a page where we have combed the internet for you and listed all the jobs that you can work at in the animation industry.
That is awesome. It sounds like you took a little bit of the work out of people for 2018.
Right.
So, again.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Giving us seeds of encouragement, even though there was like some numbers that were not pretty, but
I'm glad I didn't know the numbers. And I will say, even if you do know the numbers, do not focus on them.
Right.
Focus on that percentage of people who made it and think about how they got there, because you can get there.
Right.
Look at it as a challenge. So, yeah.
You can get there. I've never met someone that I thought couldn't make it.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming out. This is Allyssa A. Lewis with My Animation Life, Mal. And she has been gracious enough to come and join us for our first ever podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.